Disturbing, scary details behind our childhood fairy tales. The gingerbread man. The village always smelled of spice during the winter months. Cinnamon, nutmeg, cloves, warm scents meant to drive out the cold, but beneath the sweetness lingered something older, something bitter. The town's elders never spoke of it, yet every year, when the first frost crept in, the tradition was upheld, the baking of the gingerbread man. Elena had watched her grandmother make them for years, pressing the dough into human shapes with careful hands. "You must be perfect," her grandmother would whisper, voice tight with something close to fear. Then, a drop of red syrup, thick and dark, was pressed into the chest of each one before it was placed into the oven. To give him life, her grandmother explained. But the syrup was no mere decoration. It had been a practice carried through generations, meant to appease something lurking beneath the village's history. The villagers told children the tale of the gingerbread man as a game. "Run, run, as fast as you can," they'd chant, laughing as they chased one another through the snowy streets. But the story had been altered over time, its edges softened, its truth buried under sugar and flour. The original tale was far more sinister. The first gingerbread figures weren't cookies at all, but effigies, symbols of human sacrifice. In medieval times, gingerbread men were baked in secret, a twisted echo of old pagan rituals. Some believed that they could transfer a curse onto the bread, then eat it to rid themselves of sickness. Others whispered of a darker purpose, to bind restless spirits, to trap something within the dough. But the village had gone further than mere superstition. They had bound something real. Elena discovered the truth when she was 13. It was the winter of the worst famine in years, when bellies ached and hands trembled from hunger. That year, her grandmother baked the largest gingerbread man she had ever seen. Its limbs were thick, its face carved with precision. More than a mere cookie, it was a thing of sacrifice. Elena, her grandmother whispered that night, pulling her close as the howling wind rattled the windows. Long ago, when food was scarce and men were cruel, the village made a choice. A child, one who would not be missed, was taken into the woods and given to the cold. To atone, they began baking him in bread, so he would never be forgotten, so he would never return. Elena's stomach twisted. Return? Her grandmother's grip tightened, but we got greedy. The bread was warm, and the hunger was deep. We ate him, again and again. And now, he ran. Pagan rituals were not uncommon in villages past. During the harshest winters, it was believed that human-shaped bread could serve as a stand-in for real sacrifices. The ancient Celts, the Norse, even the Romans all had variations of such traditions. Some cultures baked these effigies and buried them, believing they would appease the spirits of the land. Others, however, consumed them, reenacting the act of sacrifice itself, a macabre communion with the old gods. Cannibalism was not an unfamiliar horror in the region. In times of famine, when desperation outweighed morality, entire families vanished overnight. Some whispered that the elders knew more than they admitted, that the hunger wasn't just for bread. The original gingerbread man might not have been made from flour at all. A ghostly connection wove through the town's history. It was said that those who disappeared left something behind, not just memories, but a presence. Restless spirits lurked in the shadows, their whispers carried on the winter wind. Some villagers swore they saw figures standing at the edge of the trees, thin and elongated, their forms swaying as though still caught in the grasp of starvation. When the gingerbread was baked, the figures disappeared, only to return when the scent faded. That night, Elena did not sleep. The storm outside had stilled, but something else had taken its place. A sound, the crunch of footsteps on frostbitten snow, slow, steady. A shadow moved past the window, too tall, too thin, its shape like a man, yet wrong in all the ways that mattered. The scent of burnt sugar filled the air. Then came the whisper. "Run, run, as fast as you can." The wind howled once more, but beneath it, Elena swore she heard laughter, sharp and brittle like snapping bones. The sound of teeth gnashing together, grinding, devouring. The smell of scorched ginger and something fouler, like meat left too long in the sun. The next morning, she found the door ajar, a trail of crumbs leading into the woods. Her grandmother was gone. Elena did not follow. She simply began to bake. This time, she added more than syrup. This time, She whispered to the dough, shaping the figure with trembling hands. If the village had fed the creature once, perhaps it was still hungry. Perhaps it would take what it truly wanted this time. In the dead of night, when the ovens cooled, Elena placed the fresh gingerbread man by the door, and she waited. The house was silent, the only sound the faint crackling of dying embers in the hearth. Then, just as she was about to doze off, a new sound filled the air. A soft, deliberate tapping against the wooden door. Tap, tap, tap. Elena's breath caught in her throat. The scent of ginger and burnt sugar thickened, curling through the air like fingers wrapping around her throat. The tapping grew louder, more insistent. Then, a voice thin, reedy, and far too close whispered from the other side. Elena, open the door. Let me in. Her blood ran cold. The gingerbread man had never called a name before. She clenched her hands into fists, nails digging into her palms. She dared not move. She dared not breathe. Another whisper slithered through the cracks in the wood, low and eager. You made me. Now let me taste you. The tapping turned into scraping, then pounding. The door rattled in its frame. Elena shut her eyes and prayed that morning would come. The knocking stopped. But outside, in the snow, a trail of small, dark footprints led away from her door, into the village, the smith and the devil. The village blacksmith was known for his skill, his hammer striking metal with an uncanny rhythm, shaping horseshoes, tools, and weapons with precision beyond mortal craftsmanship. But his talent came at a price. The people of the village whispered that his forge burned hotter than any other, that the iron he worked never seemed to cool. Some said he had made a deal with something ancient, something that lurked beyond the veil of fire and shadow. It was not an uncommon tale. The legend of the smith and the devil had been passed down for centuries, its origins stretching back to the pagan days when men feared the dark and the old gods demanded blood. Many cultures told similar stories of blacksmiths who tricked demons, who outwitted spirits, who forged not just weapons but pacts that bound the infernal. But few knew the full truth. The smith's name was Gregor, and he had grown tired of hardship. The forge took everything from him, his youth, his strength, his joy. One winter night, as hunger gnawed at his belly and the cold bit deep into his bones, he called out to the darkness, "If the devil himself can make me rich, I will strike a deal." The wind died. The flames in his forge guttered, then roared back to life in a blaze of unnatural blue. A figure stepped from the shadows, tall, gaunt, with skin like old iron and eyes that glowed like embers. "You called mortal?" the devil rasped, his voice like coal grinding against stone. Gregor was afraid, but he stood his ground. "Give me wealth, give me power, make my work the finest in all the land." The devil smiled, his teeth like rusted nails. "A fair trade, but all things come with a cost." Gregor expected the usual demand, his soul, his servitude, something he would have to surrender in the afterlife. But the devil did not ask for that. 3 years of prosperity, the devil said, "and at the end you will give me a life." Gregor hesitated. "Whose life?" The devil's grin widened. "That is for you to decide." Desperation made Gregor bold. He shook the devil's hand, and the deal was struck. Gold filled his coffers. His forge became the envy of kings. No blade was sharper than those he forged, no chain stronger, no lock more unbreakable. For 3 years he thrived. But on the final night of the 3rd year, the devil returned. "The time has come," the devil said, his shadow stretching unnaturally across the walls. "A life, as promised." Gregor had prepared for this moment. He had studied the old ways, the hidden knowledge whispered among blacksmiths, the secret spells woven into metal. He knew of the devil's tricks, but he also knew of the devil's weaknesses. "Before I fulfill my end of the bargain," Gregor said, "I ask for one last act of craftsmanship. Bind yourself in these chains, so I may see if they are worthy of your strength." The devil, vain and amused, allowed it. Gregor clasped the iron around the creature's limbs, chanting as he worked, forging symbols of power into the metal. When the final lock clicked into place, the devil snarled too late. The chains burned into his flesh, binding him. Gregor laughed. "Now you are mine." For years he kept the devil trapped, forcing him to work the forge to create weapons of unmatched power. But the village changed. The people grew uneasy. Strange things began to happen. Shadows moved when no one stood near. The iron Gregor sold carried whispers, and those who wielded his blade spoke of terrible dreams. The land itself seemed cursed. The villagers came with torches. Set him free, they demanded. This is no longer our home. Your greed has doomed us all. Gregor refused until the day he woke to find his wife and child missing. A trail of scorched footprints led from their bed to the forge. The chains lay empty. The devil had taken what was owed. Gregor was never seen again, but the legend persisted. Some say he roams the earth still, searching for a way to undo his mistake. Others say he was taken to the underworld, forced to toil in fire for eternity. And some whisper that his forge still burns, waiting for the next desperate soul to strike a deal. But those who listen closely, on the coldest winter nights, swear they can hear it, the sound of a hammer striking iron, over and over, ringing through the darkness like a curse that will never end. From classic legends to modern horror, we weave suspense and mystery into every whisper. Join us for a journey into the unknown, where darkness holds secrets waiting to be uncovered. Dare to listen and let the whispers guide you. Hit the like button, subscribe to Veil of Dark Whispers.